All right, hello everyone. My name is Eric Ponto. Today I'm going to be speaking about Bacon.js. You would think with the title of a talk like Bacon.js for breakfast, they would have put me in the morning. But I'm not. I'm right before happy hour. So the first thing we're going to do is change the title of my talk for happy hour. Bacon's good anytime, really, so that shouldn't be a problem. So I have up here the final code for what I'm going to be working on today on GitHub. I created a short URL for it too if you want to use that to kind of follow along. I'll add it to the Midwest.js GitHub repo later. So Bacon.js, it on its own website says that it's a functional reactive programming library. I think the purists would say that it's not, but it does help you write your code more functional. It does help you write reactive code. So I think that's an okay name for it. I'm definitely not an expert on Bacon.js or functional reactive programming. So I'm not really going to go into the theory of it as much. If you saw Chris's talk earlier on the general theory of reactivity, it was a really good introduction to the topic, more conceptual, more about the theory of it, which was really excellent. So if you didn't see that, I would definitely recommend watching it when it gets posted online. Pete also has a talk tomorrow about reactive programming, and I think he's also going to show some Bacon.js examples in there. So that would be another good talk to listen to and watch. What I want to do today is more so go over some coding examples. So I'm going to do some live coding, which I've heard is a terrible idea to do in front of people, but I'm going to give it a shot. If you see any syntax errors, like shout them out so I can fix them before my build breaks. What I'm going to start off today is talk a little bit about functional programming, just kind of a tiny bit, and then move into a tiny bit about what reactive programming is, and then go into building a little app with Bacon. So let's start off with some of the functional programming concepts. We're going to ignore the stuff at the top. Have some things commented out so you don't have to watch me type them later. The pieces that I want to go over with functional programming is similar to what Venkat was talking about this morning. He did a little piece that showed where he was mapping over an array and reducing it. He went over that pretty quickly, so I'm going to kind of explain what map does and then also what filter does and what reduce does, those three array methods, in case people haven't seen them before. So we're going to start with a simple array. We're going to go 1, 2, 3. And the first method we're going to do is map. And what map does is it takes every item in your array currently, and it applies the function that you pass to map to it, creating a new array with the returned values. So we're going to create a squared function, and it is just going to square. It'll take the value and do x times x. And we can pass that in, and that'll output 1, 4, 9. And so it went through each one and squared it. If you're not familiar with the ES6 arrow function syntax, I think I've seen a lot of people using it, but just really quick, that would be the same as a function, and then the left side is your params, and then the right side is your return. So those two things are basically the same. There's some differences that aren't important for what I'm talking about today. So that is map. Filter is another method on an array that takes a function and does something different based on its returned value. We're going to create another quick utility function up here, is odd, and that is going to be x mod 2. So odd numbers, mod 2, return 1, which will be true. Even numbers will return 0, so it's false. So we can we'll store this off, our squares. And then we can say var filtered squares, and we'll take our squares array, and we'll filter based on is odd. So that will go through each item in the array. The 1 is odd, so it'll keep it. The 4 is even, it'll throw it away. And the 9 is odd, so then we'll end up with 1, 9. And then the final array method that I wanted to go over is reduce. And we're going to create yet another utility function up here where it will just add things together. And we'll say total equals filtered and reduce and pass it the sum function. Reduce is a little bit different in that it doesn't just have the current value of the array as it's going through it. It has an accumulator, so each time it goes through, it passes the previously returned value into the function as the first param, and then the second param is the current value. So let's write this out without the sum function first. So the first time we'd go in here, our cum value would be nothing. You can pass in an original. A cum value is the second parameter of reduce, so we could do comma 0 here if we wanted to explicitly say it starts with 0. So it would be nothing plus 1, we'd have 1. Then we'd go to the second value, which is 9. Since we returned 1 the first time, our cum is 1, and our value is 9, so we'll end up with 10 when they get added together. And then since it's the final number, it'll be stored in total. I think you can do then, you wouldn't need to store off all these temporary states. And so your ending code would end up looking something more like this, where, again, from the keynote this morning, kind of talking about the simplicity and how you can read it and it being more declarative, you can just kind of read through this code and know what's going on. I have an array. I'm squaring all of its values. Then I'm taking only the odd values. And then I'm going to sum them all up. And versus kind of the more iterative, traditional way, we'd probably have had var total equals 0, created our for loop, less than array length. And from there, we'd have to square values. So we get the square, which is the value times the value. We have to check if that's odd. Square mod 2. And if it is, we'd add that on to our total. With this code, I think one of the big things is, well, first it's hard to read, and then I think the second is it's harder to test. If you ended up with a total of 20, you wouldn't really know why. You'd have to kind of step through one by one, figure out what piece is wrong. Where with this, with the more functional way, you could test your square function, your is odd function, and your sum function, and quickly see which part of the whole thing was wrong. Okay, that's the kind of 5-minute overview of some functional programming things you can do with arrays. But you're probably wondering how array methods are going to help us write an application. And that's where the reactive programming side of things come in. The key thing to kind of think about with this is with arrays, you have, they are values that are separated by a comma, and basically you ask it for the next one and loop through it, getting the next one over and over. So it's like the iterable concept that's being added to ES6, where you call .next and you're pulling the next value from your iterable. Well, there's like a sister concept to that, which is the observable. And in an observable, instead of you having like a static set of values that you can just pull the next, you have values that you don't know when they're going to happen next, so they are asynchronous. And so instead, you tell it, hey, I want to know when you get a new value, and you need to push it to me. So basically, you register some sort of callback, and it'll push the values to you. When you build out that type of object, because they are really the same thing, just a pull versus push, you can start applying all those same sort of array methods that we saw, like map and filter, onto these observables. Kind of what we'll go through is see that you can kind of build anything as an observable from your UI events. So when people are clicking on things or moving their mouse, typing, to Ajax requests, to your view code, and then like to your components that you want to build when building an app. They can all be an observable, and they can be composed together. They can be changed with a map function, etc. So just to kind of draw that out a little bit for you, the real difference is, like with an array, you have a list of items separated by a comma. But what we're going to start thinking about is a stream of values separated by time. So these dashes are time. And then it'll fire off an event. Let's say these are click events. So whenever someone clicks, it's going to be firing off these events. And then I can do something like map on that and change them into whatever I want, like different letters or something. What Bacon specifically has is two types of observables. It has, the first is an event stream, which is kind of more the classic one, like your user interactions are an event stream. And that looks really like this, where events are just happening when they happen. The other is properties, and those are a little bit different in that they have a current value, and what you get is whenever it changes. So it might be X, and then it changes to Y, and then it changes to Z. For our purposes, really, we don't need to worry too much about them being different. They do have some different methods and work differently in some different cases, but for what we're going to do today, we're going to treat them the same. Basically, either of them will be able to do things like map and filter on. And then you can, the way you subscribe to the events or to the changes is using the onValue method. And we'll see how that works here in a second. So I have a grunt built that's watching this app.js file, and it's going to build into my dist folder over here. This is kind of small, maybe. I'll make it a little bigger. So I'm going to add a script to my page for the built file so that we can starting to see some of this code actually run. So the first example, it's kind of an easy way to start thinking about asynchronous things happening at different time intervals. So it's really going to be an interval. So it's Bacon.interval. We set the milliseconds we want it to tick, and then we have it return a value each time it ticks. So we're going to have it return 1. And then from there, we can do very similar things to what we did with the previous example, where I can say, I can scan. Scan is very similar to reduce in that it takes the previous value and the current value, and you can combine them together, and then whatever they return, the next one will. So we can use a sum function. I actually have here in the utils module, I need to export these, a sum function and an is_odd function. So I can import those in up here. There we go. We'll import sum and is_odd, from my utils. So I can then filter for just the odd values after they put through. And then, like I said, we use onValue to finally subscribe to any of the changes or events. So I'm just going to console log that out. I'm going to kind of draw out what this will look like. So we're going to have every second, it's going to output a 1. I missed a dash. And then what I'm going to do is apply the sum function. So the first time, this is the seed value. So it's 0 plus 1 will be 1. Then it'll be 1 plus 1 is 2. And then 2 plus 1 is 3, et cetera. The filter is going to create a new stream that skips over all the non-odd numbers. Then I'm going to console log this. So what we should see is every second, it'll do something, but it's going to skip every other second and not log. So let's open up my console. Oh, I'm not on the internet. My fonts are not going to look good. And hopefully it broke. Cannot find module utils. Forgot the slash in there. So once that rebuilds, we can watch it, make sure it goes. There it goes. Did it go? I don't know. No, I still have a problem. Oh yeah, good call. Thank you. That's a pretty obvious one. All right. Let's check the build again. Looks like it worked that time. And there, it's logging now. Okay. So I think the thing I wanted to show with that is that we can treat these asynchronous events the same as we can arrays. So when we want to start applying this to the UI, the first and easiest way to kind of do this is very jQuery-like, where we're going to build out just a tiny bit of HTML, and then you can actually use jQuery with Bacon, and it gives you like a plugin to create an event stream based off of click events or any type of user events. So we're going to have a text input and then an output, and use jQuery here. And then there's just a little thing you have to do when you're using Browserify with Bacon and jQuery, because it doesn't add the method onto jQuery's prototype. Okay. So from here, we can select our input, and just like we would do the on method, we can do as event stream. So this is like really the same as on click that you would do with jQuery normally. The difference is that we have now a Bacon event stream. And so we're going to change this to key up. That's more interesting. So we're going to, into the next step, we get the event. And now we want to get the value off the event. And then we'll just plop that value into our output. So we get the event, and we want to get the element, so the target, and then its value. So we could write it out like this. The nice thing is that Bacon provides some shortcuts so that you can pass it a string, and then it will kind of apply that on whatever's passing through. So this is really useful for pulling off a value. If you want to do something like the event.prevent default, there's a do action method, and you can pass it .prevent default, and it'll call that on there to kill the click event. But here we're taking a stream of events, so we're going to draw it out again. We have an event whenever I type. And then with this map, I'm turning that into whatever letter you type. So A, B, or the whole value of the input. So this would be like AB, and this would be ABC. And then from there, we can do, again, an on value to get the value. Then we could pass that into our output. The other thing, again, more Bacon utilities or shortcuts, is it has a method called assign, which allows you to pass in an object and then its method that you want to call. And it'll call that method with the current value whenever it gets a value. So here, you should see, okay, all right, that's annoying, sorry. Try not to move stuff around too much. Okay, I should be able to type in here. Whatever I type shows up in my output below. So now we're starting to build out. You can see how we could use this to like build out a whole app using kind of the old way. We would build out all of our HTML, and then we would add a bunch of kind of jQuery-ish code on top of it. And it does a really good job of like helping you write that type of code in this more functional style, more declarative, and I think simpler. But that's not really the way like we're building JavaScript applications very much anymore. There's all the different MVC frameworks or things like React or more component-based apps. So I'm going to show kind of how we can use event streams and properties to put together an app. It's very componentized, and then the kind of difference between the MVC model and this model is with MVC, we kind of have our models, and then when they change, maybe the controller is going to push that through to the view, and then the view will re-render. Instead of having a model with like if you like do Backbone, you would have like model on change and then view.re-render. It's all going to be a stream. So we're going to have all of our user interactions, all of our UI events, any sort of Ajax calls, all of those things, even our view code itself are going to be just like a chain of streams that we modify by mapping it, or we're going to throw out events that we don't care about with filter. And then each component will be its own piece. Then at our application level, it'll be combining all those components together so that when any of those fire an update, it's going to re-render our app. So what I'm going to use for that, we're going to get rid of jQuery. I'm going to use Mithril, which is a very similar library to React, only much, much smaller. It's like 12K when it's minified and gzipped. It has some different utilities in there. What I'm going to use it for is really its render method, and it does rendering in the same sort of way that React does, where it builds up a virtual DOM and then it diffs it, and then it'll only update the actual parts that have changed. Okay, so building out the first component here, we're going to build out the header of this page. It's not a very exciting header, and it's completely static, but we'll build it out as its own component. And so for something static like this, we can use a Bacon constant, which is a property that has an initial value that never changes. But what it does is it'll fire its to the onValue callback immediately. And so you can compose this property with other properties and listen to them all together. So we're just creating a constant that is our HTML. So Mithril, like React, can use JSX to compile down this HTML format into its code. What it would compile down to is like m parenthesis nav comma and then like an object that has all the attributes and then like an array of all of its children. We can actually look at that when this compiles. So as soon as I import header from header, we'll see it after I'm done with this bit. So we're getting that header code from the header module. And for right now, I'm just going to listen to when it has a value. When it does, I'm going to take that, which is basically our view, our header view. We're going to pass that into Mithril's render. And it's, unlike React, it takes the element first, and then it takes the JSX code or the view code. So this will render my header to the body when it has a value, which is right away since it is a constant. So I think my build is running, it's done. So it doesn't look any different, but now this code, it wasn't in the HTML, it got rendered onto the page. I guess we could like view source and see it's not there. That was rendered via Mithril. And just to look really quick at what that compiles down to, somewhere at the bottom here, header. Yeah, so you can see it's a div, and then it takes an object of its attributes, etc. You could write it out that way too, if you feel uncomfortable about writing HTML in your JavaScript, which it does kind of take a while to get comfortable with that concept.
What was that file you were just looking at?
That is my built file. So I'm using some ES6 stuff, and so I'm running that through Babel. And then the JSX syntax, it runs through a build step that converts that into like straight Mithril code.
Just noticing it was over 4,000 lines.
Yeah, because I'm including like Bacon unminified and Mithril unminified. So I'm importing some big things. Really, you would add an additional, so this is also using browserify, you'd probably add on the uglifyify task or something like that to make it small. Yeah, it's big, and then, so when I refresh, it takes a little while right now. So I'm going to show how to kind of compose multiple components together and render them in your app. So instead of listening to just header, we're going to create another bit. I'll just call it, I don't know, H1. And we'll just make it another Bacon constant for now. And it will return an H1 that says hello. All right. So I can't listen to just the header. I want to listen to multiple things. So Bacon has, instead of onValue, it has onValues with an S. And Bacon, I can listen to multiple different properties or event streams, combine them together, and do what I want with them when they fire. So I'll listen to header and H1. That gets passed into a function that I can render to the body. And I'll put a div around this called app. And in JSX, to like execute code or to show that part is data, you put it in curlies. This will be lowercase. So that would be putting my header in. And to make it look nice, I am using Bootstrap, so I'll put the main content here in a container, and this will be my H1. And close the div. All right. So when that rebuilds, we'll take a look at it. And we get the header and the H1 next to each other. So these components were both completely static. They were just constants. So we're going to build out a couple, 2 or 3, ones that are actually dynamic, that we have interaction with it, and see how that kind of works. First, I'm going to get rid of this H1. And we're going to build out a counter. Okay, so what my counter is going to be, this is like the classic, there's 2 classic Bacon examples. They're both on its site, so you could go out and read it. What it is you have an input that has a plus button next to it and a minus button next to it. When you click the plus button, we'll add 1. When we click the minus button, we'll subtract 1. Like the traditional jQuery way to do this, you'll hook up event listeners to both buttons. Each time you click one, you're going to read the value from the input and then add 1 to it or subtract 1 to it. So you're relying on the state of your DOM to like keep track of things. And with Bacon, we're not going to do that. We're not really going to keep track of things anywhere. So the first thing we need to do is add our click events. So with JSX and with Mithril, you could add them right in here. I could say like on click, do whatever. But what I want to do is create those event streams from the event. So Bacon has, just like the jQuery way, so instead of as event stream, click, has a Bacon from event, you pass it the element that you want the event on and then the name of the event. So in here, I'm creating the click event. I'm going to key up event that we're going to use later. And I'm putting them on the body because we're not actually rendering the HTML until something happens. So I can't connect my event handlers directly to the elements they're on. So I'm using event delegation. I just have a couple events attached to the body, and then what we're going to do is whenever that event fires on the body, we'll use filter to make sure it matched the selector of the thing that we wanted to fire the event on. So I have this matches function here that uses the matches method that's on elements, and you pass a selector, a CSS selector, and it will return a Boolean true or false if that element matches the selector. So I have these couple of functions already coded. They're getting imported in to my counter component already. So we'll use them. First, we'll code the minus, and we'll start with the click, which is the body click. We're going to filter for where it matches the minus class. So you can see I have that on the minus button. And then I'm going to map that to -1. So every time you click on the page, it's going to go in to this, and we're going to have all the clicks on the page. Then it's going to filter and give me a stream of only the clicks that were on the minus button, and then it's going to map that to a stream of whenever the minus button was clicked, a -1. So we're going to do the same thing for the plus button, except for we are going to change that to a positive one. And then just like the example that I showed with the interval, we're going to use scan to sum up all of the values that have been fired in the stream. So what we need to do is combine the minus stream with the plus stream and then add them all together. And that's going to be our total value. We'll save our total equals minus, and then we're going to merge the plus stream. And we'll do this down here at the bottom. I'll add some more lines down here. And then we will use scan to add them all together. And that's now a new stream of our sum of pluses and minuses. Then from there, this is what we're going to export, is we're going to take our total and we're going to map that through our view. So you can see that our view takes the total and it puts it in the value. So we're returning the view as the last bit of the stream. So now what we're ending up with is a stream of HTML that updates as the total gets updated. And in our app, we'll listen to that. It'll get passed in here. And we can change this to counter. Okay, let's see you build. Oh, thank you. Start that build back over. Okay. I forgot a step, maybe, or it's broken. Let's see if I forgot the step. Oh, I didn't save counter. The other thing you usually want to do with these is add a start with value, so that when it gets mapped into the view initially, it has an initial value. Okay. I think it's done. It's not done. Okay. Let's figure it out. I have my app. It gets the counter from counter. I'm injecting it. Okay. I have code. You can look at it really quick. This looks all right. Export default, total, map, view. We might just move on. Yeah. I don't know. Oh, I have an error. No, I don't. Okay. On which one? Sorry. Right there? Yeah. I don't think so. I don't know. Yeah, let's do that. I think. No. Okay. Counter's capitalized up there. It gets passed into lowercase counter. It's getting passed in right there. It's down there. I really don't know. I think this is right, filter. Oh, yeah, it might be. Yeah. Let's try it. That was it. Good call. Okay. All right. I lost it again, huh? There we go. Okay, so now we have a counter. Thank you for finding that. Okay, good. Now we're back on track. And my screen is gone again. Okay. So now I'm going to build out the second common thing that you'll see. It's the second example on Bacon's site, and that is an autocomplete component. If you've ever had to build one yourself, you kind of know about the complexity of it. There's just a lot of things that you have to take into consideration. You don't want to fire off too many. Let's fix this really quick. You don't want to fire off too many events or too many Ajax calls if people are typing really fast. Or if you're firing off all these Ajax requests and they're coming back in different orders, then you have to somehow maintain that queue in order. So that's all really difficult, but those are things that are solved by using Bacon. So I have up here an input, then I have a drop-down menu that's going to go under it. I'm going to take all my results and create LIs for them that I'm going to inject into here. The first thing I'm going to code is the Ajax call part of it. Mithril has a built-in helper for doing Ajax calls, and its request. It takes a method of get and then a URL. And I can show I have equals term. I have this coded in my server.js file. If you were to go pull this down, it's just, I list out some different types of bacon and I assign some prices to them. And I'm doing a fuzzy match against whatever you pass into types. So we can go hit that really quick just to see it. So if you, types, it returns all of them. And then if like I pass in part of a string, it'll return the matches to me. So switching back to our type component here, we create this Ajax request to get that based on a term that's passed in. And I'm using the ES6 template strings there to make that a little bit easier. And so Mithril's request returns a promise. And we want to like wrap that in Bacon and make it into a stream. So since it's a promise, Bacon provides from promise. And we'll just wrap that around the promise so that we can use this down below. Okay. Quick drink. All right, so we're going to start with, and we're going to export this out. We're going to start with the key up event that was in that events before. So that's key ups on the body. We're going to get it where they match. I have an ID on my input there of type. So when it matches type. And for right now, I'm just going to get the value off of it using that trick I showed before. We'll pass that value into the query function and then get its values. To do that, since what query returns is actually a wrapped promise, if we did map on it, we would be getting those wrapped promises. So what we want to do on it instead is Flatmap. And what Flatmap does is with arrays is if you have like array of arrays, it'll flatten all those arrays so that you just get a single array. So with this, we have a stream. We're returning a stream. And so it's going to flatten that into a single stream of values. And so I can kind of draw this out for you. So we have our key up events. I'll just get rid of it. And then so we've got a bunch of them. We're only going to get the ones that are on our input, so we might skip some. Then we're going to take the value of the input. This might be A, B. And then when we're going to call query here. And what's going to happen there is it's going to spawn off another stream. So we've got time going by, we hit this, it's going to spawn off this other stream. And when that comes back, we're basically, right, we're going to get whatever returned from our query. And then this one will come, it'll fire off another stream. And here we'll get B. And then when we flatten that, you would see we'll get QA down here and then QB. The problem, like I said, though, this would be just a regular flat map, is that because we're firing off Ajax requests, we don't necessarily know the order that they're going to come back in. So Bacon has solved that as well with a method called Flatmap latest. And what that does is, let's say A was taking a long time to come back, and it hadn't come back by this point, it just will kill this QA stream right here in favor of the QB stream because that started. So we won't ever see the results from QA in our final stream because it didn't return in time before we kicked off the next one. Okay, if that makes some sense, hopefully. So we're going to flat map latest on query. And like all that roundabout way, what that is going to do is this stream is going to be a stream of the results of our Ajax call. So we're going to get an array of Bacon types. And what we want to do from there is we're going to map that into this li function. So we have results. We're going to map over the results with li. So now we have an array of li's. And then we'll map that into the view. And they'll go right here. Our li's will go in there. So fingers crossed, first try this works. It didn't. What do we need to do? Oh yeah, thanks. Okay, so we're gonna add in our type to the app. Have it passed in there, and then we'll put it just on top of our counter. So it'll be like you select the type, you select how many you want. Okay, this time. Nothing. Was it done? Does it just not have anything? I think what I need to add is, again, that starts with thing that I was talking about. Since we won't have anything initially, we need to start with an array so that it can map over that properly here. Pretty sure, yeah. There we go. So when I start typing in anything, it comes up with what I typed. The additional two pieces were that I said, like, if we don't want to fire it off if someone's typing really fast, so we can add a debounce method to that, which will basically say, like, if you're typing too fast, like faster than 200 milliseconds, it'll wait until you're done and then fire off the Ajax request so that we're not doing too many. And also, we don't want it to fire off when our value is only one character, because it's the result set. Like here, the result set's pretty small and it's not a big deal. But in like real life, if you had a much longer list, your result set might be gigantic if you only searched on one character. Like it's going to match almost all of your entries. So we're going to say that we're going to filter where the value's length is greater than 1. So you have to type in more than one character. Oh, yeah, that would be good too, because then it would ignore spaces. You can also do some things like you might want to, there's a method so that it'll only be distinct things, so only if your value changed, because there's plenty of keys you can press that don't actually change the value, and you wouldn't actually want to refire again. So you can add in some of those sorts of things. If we watch down here, and you can see it doesn't fire off an Ajax request until I type 2 characters. And then if I type like really fast, it only fires off 1 at the end of me typing now. So we've made the performance a lot better there, just with adding 2 lines of code. Okay. I'm going to fly through this next section, and then we'll be out of time. I don't want to hold people away from happy hour. So, okay. Now we want to do, if you click in the results, store that off. So we're going to create a selected item. That's going to be based off of the click. It's going to be where it matches our, it's going to be in the drop-down menu. And it's an A, and off of that we're going to get the data set, which is the name and the price. So target data set. And we're going to add a start with here so that we have an initial thing here. We're going to have a name of nothing and a price of 0. Then we're going to split out this other part into some different chunks. So we're going to get the typed value. We'll have that also start with nothing maybe. And so this is now typed value. And we're going to get, we're going to separate off the results. Okay. All right. And then what we want to do is kind of create a state of whether you've selected one or not. Then we're going to update this input with the selected value. So I'm going to say, and not selected. We don't want to show it open if you've selected one. We're going to set the value of this to, we're going to say data.name. This is actually going to be data.selected. We're going to pass in data up here. And so now we have this state where we have 2 different things coming into it. We're going to have our selected clicks and our key up, so our typing. So Bacon has a way to create a property that listens to different streams and will return a value for what that property should be. And it's Bacon when. It's a kind of weird syntax. It's like different pairs. The first pair is an array of the things you want to listen to. And then the second is a function. I'm going to write out function of selected. And that, so this is what I return here is what the property is going to be set to. Okay, let's get this out really quick. It's going to have selected is true, and we'll say name is our selected name. Our price is selected price. Then we're going to create another pair of these where I have the typed value. And we'll do this, where it returns. Selected is going to be, if it doesn't have a length. So if it has a length, I want to set it to be not selected. And then the name will be the actual value. And the price will just set to 0 because we haven't selected one yet. I'm going to store this off as data. Then down here, just really quick, we're going to combine these things together with Bacon combined with. And I'm going to take the view and pass in my results and my data. Okay. It's the last thing, and I'm out of time, so hopefully it works. Oh, start with is not defined. Okay, let's fix that really quick. Dot start with. Okay. There. So it updated the state there of the selected, and I have it up there. Then when I start typing again, I can select something else. That's the last thing I have. There's another component that's in the GitHub repo that takes the price from this, and it'll multiply it times the amount that you put in here. It's doing the same sort of stuff. It uses a combined to take this price, to listen to this price, to listen to this total, and put that into another component. That's all. Could take some questions, or we could go have a beer.